Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. Over the years since I launched Job Search Radio, I've had a lot of really good information and a lot of really good interviews. And the number of great interviews has been very small. This is one of them. Donn LeVie and I go back and forth like two bull elephants covering an enormous amount of territory. And, you know, it's the stuff that you don't really hear very often about what hiring managers are looking for when they're evaluating people. Donn was a hiring manager for many years, and he takes the time to share that kind of information. And the show has lots of little pearls, so I'd love you to pause the recording and be in a position where you can take some notes down, because the stuff flies by so quickly. And it's the sort of thing that you really ought to integrate, listen to again and again and again, because it will really help you in this job search and for many years to come. So I hope you enjoy this show as much as I did. And if you did, head over to iTunes and give Job Search Radio 5 stars, leave a favorable comment about the show, because it's going to help other people discover it. So hang in there, enjoy the ride, and let's sing along.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest this time is Donn, with 2 N's, LeVie. And Donn is a former Fortune 500 hiring manager, award-winning author, career strategy expert, keynote speaker, seminar leader, and all-around swell human being. Donn, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're glad to be here as well. So, where did you work as a Fortune 500 hiring manager?
Well, my first job was out of college was actually with the U.S. Department of Commerce, so I actually have some federal government experience. I worked as a research oceanographer with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And from there, I transitioned into Phillips Petroleum as an exploration geologist. And as I worked my way up the ranks, I became a project manager, special projects manager for the oil and gas division. And whenever we needed to hire physical science technicians or other geologists who would be working in the area of my responsibility, that's when I actually got started in my hiring manager position. From there, I went on to work with a couple of smaller oil companies in the same capacity. I changed careers in 1986 when it was a case of Heineken was more expensive than a barrel of oil. I had to find a new career. And I segued into software development and worked my way up through there, through those companies. Went on to work with Fisher Controls, Motorola, Semiconductor Product Sector, Intel Corporation, and several other smaller companies. But in all of those companies, over nearly 3 decades of experience, I have had a lot of hiring manager experience where I've probably looked at over 1,000 cover letters and resumes and conducted hundreds of job interviews and hired countless technical, engineering, scientific, marketing professionals.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is after 30 years, you've looked at 1,000. If you go to my website, folks, and look at mine, I've done it for 40. And as far as I've counted, and there were a lot of years I didn't count, it's been over 500,000, easily. Yeah. So I'll pause and say you're lucky that it was only 1,000. So,
yeah, I had my work to do too as well.
Me too, but that's a different conversation. So,
brother,
folks, I just want to say before we start, if you didn't hear your profession amongst the ones that Donn worked in, trust me, there's material that's going to be coming up that's going to be relevant for you. So, when you were starting to look for people, what sort of things did you start exploring in backgrounds and experiences that made them relevant for you?
Well, the first thing that I looked at was a cover letter that got to the point. Don't tell me you've attached a resume. I'm smart enough to understand that if I'm reading a cover letter, I know there's a resume behind it. And when I get to the resume, I'm always looking for evidence of accomplishments. And an accomplishment is an achievement that goes above and beyond the daily duties and responsibilities. An accomplishment or achievement actually contributes to the higher strategic objectives of the organization. But far too often, too many people list task completions and duties and responsibilities as accomplishments, and hiring managers are wise to that. So I always look to find out, what have you done to contribute to the bottom line or the overall mission, vision, objectives of the organization?
And I just want to say in defense of those folks that the paradox for them is organizations post ads often that talk in terms of skills that they want a person to have. And the easiest way for them to demonstrate that is, just by listing, and your guys work in software development, so if someone lists, the technology that they've worked with and the project that they worked on and the project was completed, and that confirms the qualifications part, but they got to go further, right?
Yeah, they have to go further. It's still a task completion. If you're hired to provide code for a project and you provided the code and the project ended on time, what was the extra value that you provided? Can you provide for me any kind of quantitative assessment? Did the project come in X dollars under budget or so many weeks ahead of schedule? That's a sign of accomplishment and an achievement. And even with people who can't quantify that, they still can ask, what did this duty or responsibility contribute to that higher strategic objective? And sometimes I see a lot of that with finance and accounting resumes. They really can't quantify in cost savings so much or revenues generated. But then I turned the question around and I said, you've got other people competing for this position. How can you state these bullet list items in a manner that places you in an advantageous position over people with the same experience?
Well, we didn't get audited that year.
Yeah, that might be a plus. Dodged an IRS bullet, yeah.
And it is a dilemma for a lot of folks. So often what I encourage people to do is at least make the comparison with others. So the example I classically use is in the call center. You handled 17% more calls than the average or the mean for call center workers in the organization, translating into a savings of X number of dollars.
Absolutely, Jeff. That's exactly what hiring managers are looking for. Hiring managers speak the language of numbers. And if there's any way you can quantify your achievements, even ballpark, then that'll get an interest of a hiring manager. And the next step, of course, when a hiring manager sees it on a resume, is to schedule that interview. And the interesting thing is on that resume, all those bullet lists, they need to be put in order of importance to the hiring managers. Not what you as a candidate deem important, but what a hiring manager would deem important.
And that is so true, Don. It's like when people answer the question, tell me about yourself.
That's a loaded Jeff, I'll tell you, I can't tell me. 95% of the people, when I ask that question, they come back with, what do you want to know? And it's like, well, you just blew the opportunity to sell me in a one-line pitch on why I should hire you.
I agree. Most of the time people talk about what they've done, and they don't talk about what they've done that matters to the hiring manager. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I remember one time I posed this question to a guy interviewing for a software development position, and I said, so tell me about yourself. And he said, well, I'm a cello-playing kids soccer coach who's on the board of the PTA on getting your projects done ahead of time and ahead of schedule. I hired the guy on the spot. So I learned about him in 1 sentence.
What was it about that attracted you?
Huh?
What was it about that answer that attracted you? Because it's an atypical answer, you got to admit.
Exactly, because he took the context exactly how I know all about his technical background because I have his resume and I have the results of the interview sitting in front of me. But I wanted to know, who are you? And rather than coming out and saying, who are you, I wanted to stick with that question, tell me about yourself. And he actually went for it. I learned that he's a classical musician, as I am. I play classical guitar, so we have a connection there. He's actively involved in his kids' lives. He's a good dad, probably. He's involved with the PTA. He has a concern about the community and his neighborhood and his kids' education. And he knew exactly what my soft points were. Getting projects done ahead of schedule and under budget. I mean, he answered everything in one concise sentence.
Do you think he researched you to find out that you had that interest in classical instruments?
No, I don't think so, because this was a few years ago before I really studied classical guitar on a more serious note. So I don't think he did the research there. You probably wouldn't have found anything.
I was curious about that because, obviously it's a lot easier these days to do the research. And
yes, it is.
As such, finding out about someone and what their interests are and kind of tying everything together, folks, is a lot easier than when this person walked in for an interview. So why don't you do that, folks? Why don't you do that?
Right. And, when that resume comes across my desk or any hiring manager's desk, you've got 10 seconds to try to grab that hiring manager's attention from the resume, because they will camp out on the upper two-thirds of page 1 for the most part. And if they see what they like just scanning that section, they may go to page 2 if you have a page 2. And if they see what they like, they'll go back and read it in more detail. With a cover letter, you have 5 to 7 seconds to grab that hiring manager's attention in that first sentence, or else they're off to the next candidate.
So what would you look for in a cover letter? Or I'll put it in the context of a cover email. No one's going to open up a second file if it's attached to an email. They're just going to go right for the one that suggests it's the resume and skip the cover letter. So I always tell people use the message area of the email as you would the old-fashioned cover letter. So
right, exactly. And I encourage people, whether they use the email or the hard copy cover letter, it's another document in your arsenal that attests to your expertise. And whether the hiring manager reads it or not, somebody will read it along the way in your career development. But I always started, I actually got 3 job interviews, for three separate positions based on the strength of my cover letter. The hiring managers told me over my career, they never even got to my resume. They read my cover letter and they called me in for an interview. And the thing that set them off was my very first sentence was a rhetorical question, which was, would ABC company want to hire a professional, fill in the blank, whatever the position is, who has accomplished the following? And then I had a short bullet list that I pulled from my resume that were all quantified accomplishments. And, of course, you get them into thinking, well, of course I would want somebody who's done this on my team. And there's a lot of psychology behind the fact of getting somebody in the yes mindset as they're reading through a cover letter. And I go on to tell them, if you don't have anybody on your staff right now, then you need to call me, Donn LeVie Jr. And I go on to promote. Here's the big difference, Jeff. I promote the future benefits of my expertise, not the features of my past experience, which is how most cover letters are written. They're a summary of a resume, and it's like, if you're sending me a summary of your resume, why do I need to look at your resume? Sell me on how you can help me going forward. Your resume will tell me what you've done in the past, but the cover letter is a pitch. It's a marketing promotion letter that tries to sell the hiring manager on the future benefits of your expertise when you come on board.
And we're going to be back with more from Donn in just a moment. But first, I've been a professional recruiter for a long time now, and I have interviewed and evaluated resumes and critiqued hundreds of thousands of people over the course of my career. If there's one thing that's been proven to me time and time again, is that most people don't execute on their job search very well, and they learn by trial and error, missing out on opportunities galore that they really want to get. And thus their job search takes a lot longer, and they go through agony time and time again with bad interviews, bad negotiations, and ultimately taking jobs that they really would prefer not taking. Instead of making lots of mistakes throughout your job search, I'm launching a new service called JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. It's coming in the next few weeks, but if you'd like me to notify you about the launch, visit the site. Again, that's JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. And in the right-hand column, you'll see a space there where you can enter your email address, and I'll send you a notice to let you know when we launch. You won't be getting lots of mail from me. You'll just get the launch notice and maybe one thing afterwards just to make sure you didn't miss it. Again, JobSearchCoachingHQ.com is coming in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Come on in, sign up, and you'll get the lowest price available for the service. Okay, we're back. Let's pick up with Don where we left off, which was talking about the future benefits that you'll be able to provide the organization and doing that in the cover letter / cover email. So in crafting this, I know you used yourself as an example, asking the rhetorical question of, would ABC company be interested in someone who has already successfully accomplished fill in the blank and listing it as bullet points. How did you tie the bow for them at the conclusion? Would you be asking for the interview, saying that you'd be calling to follow up? How did you end that part of your application?
That's exactly what I did, Jeff. And I tell people, I counsel people in the seminars, in the consulting assignments that I have, that if you want to improve your odds of moving forward in the hiring process, you have to take control of the next contact. And that closing paragraph would say something like, I have a proven track record, even though it's a rehash. I have a proven track record of adding value to every project for which I was responsible. I can do the same for you at such a company. I will call you in a few days to determine to discuss further how I can be that value-add solutions provider you are looking for. And then I make the call. I may get voicemail. I may get a gatekeeper, such as an executive assistant. I may even actually get to talk with the hiring manager. But it really doesn't matter if I get through or not. The fact that even if I have to leave a voicemail or if I have to leave a message with a gatekeeper, that hiring manager is going to get the message that I called again. It brings my name up. And that association, it's called an associative model that our brains happen to configure with information. It ties my name with my qualifications again in the mind of the hiring manager. It's building that familiarity. Now, sometimes an ad will say, no phone calls, please. Well, then I just take that last sentence off, and it says, I know I can do the same for you at your company to be that solutions provider. That's a much more powerful close than the usual namby-pamby. I look forward to hearing from you at your earliest convenience. Do you want the position or not? You have to go for it today and show that you have a consultant's mindset, not an employee mindset.
I agree with you. And with that in mind, not everyone is as salesy as you are, or I am. So the question is, they're going to get voicemail, and are you going to pitch in the voicemail? Are you going to refresh their memory about the resume? How would you leave a message for people if you got voicemail?
I would say, hi, this is Donn LeVie. You have my resume and cover letter I sent you a few days ago for the such and such position. I'm anxious to hear when I can come in and further explain how I can be that problem solver you're looking for. And here's my contact information. Just leave a phone number. And if they don't follow through, they don't follow up, then, they don't follow up. But a contact like that is never a lost contact. I just finished an article for a professional society journal that said if you didn't get the job, don't despair. You didn't get the job today. That hiring manager may be a future contact because the person that they hire instead of you may not have worked out. 6 months later, they're looking for someone else. So it always pays to stay in touch with those contacts, whether it's to send them down the road, send them a copy of an article you've had published in a peer-reviewed journal. It keeps your name out in front of that hiring manager's mindset. So when the opportunity arises, they think of you first to call.
It's interesting you brought up that example of the firm that has what I call the misfire. They hired the wrong person. Everyone knows it, and they're reluctant to get rid of the individual. That additional contact goes a long way toward keeping someone fresh in their mind. Now, these days, would you have them reach out to connect through LinkedIn, through email? How would you maintain the contact?
Yeah, I would suggest that anybody looking for a job change or a career change today, the whole approach is different because of the advent of social media. What you want to do is identify who those movers and shakers and decision makers are and go on the same platforms that they're on, LinkedIn, Twitter. No doubt they're on LinkedIn and Twitter and some of the other applications that are out there, and just kind of shadow them for a while to see what's important to them. What are they talking about? What are they posting? What are they retweeting? Get a feel for what's driving their interest. Then I would suggest connecting with them, like contributing to conversations that they may have posted, retweeting some of their tweets on Twitter, liking some of their posts. That way you start to build a connection. You start to build a history with this particular hiring manager. And after a period of time, it's a very proactive process. You can actually ask for the contact and ask to either reconsider your application or your resume, or say, I think I have a way for you to solve your problem. When can I contact you personally? And it's a bold way of doing it, but this is the way hiring and finding candidates is going. Hiring managers want to hire experts. They don't want another employee. And the way to develop that expertise, you have to be actively participating in your profession and be active on those social media platforms that are promoting the interest of those decision makers that you want to contact.
You're absolutely right. Everything you can do to give someone an edge goes a long way toward winning an opportunity. Now, in the example that you gave about recontacting someone who turned you down previously, even if it's a 2% edge, when the person is being replaced or they're thinking about it, you're the first person that they're thinking of.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. And the thing that and you probably well know, you always remember the people that you had a personal connection with. There was something about them initially, that chemistry that you liked, that gut instinct that said, I'd like to have this person on my team. And every hiring manager, myself included, when I came down to looking at all these resumes and all the interviews that we've had, the bottom line question was, who would I and my team like to work with? And it's that likability, that impression management that is so important that will help you get to the next level in the hiring process.
Now, as a hiring manager, when someone came knocking on your door, knock on the door here for effect.
Sure.
When someone came knocking on your door and said, Don, can I see you? I know this guy who may be interesting to you. What was your gut level response when you got that tap on your door?
My gut level response is, it all depends too on the person who's knocking on my door. Is it someone who's another achiever and someone who consistently exceeds, the goals and expectations of the position? Then I'll say, sure, let them get a resume to me. I'll be glad to take a look at it. That's the quickest way to get into a company is by referral.
And it goes to a point that I make time and again, and that is always never, ever apply for a job through an applicant tracking system if it's at all avoidable. Always better to use social proof, that contact within an organization who walks the resume over, who gives you a testimonial. If you know that person, great. If you can quickly develop a relationship with someone you don't know, great, but that introduction goes a long way in creating positive real estate in someone's mind, right?
It absolutely does, Jeff, and it's also a far less expensive way to recruit because you don't have to go through channels, of maybe a recruiter and bringing people in for interviews. The time value, how do I say it? The money value of time that's involved in the hiring process is shortened when you can bring in a trusted employee can bring a referral to you to consider for hiring.
After all, folks, and all of you know I do recruiting and coaching, and I have for a long time. When someone is hiring someone from me, it's not an inexpensive proposition. Even if the first person I refer is perfect, which statistically is improbable because I'm still learning about this client if they're a new one. So I may miss a couple of points, but let's assume that I present the perfect individual right out of the box. They're hired for $150,000 a year, just for the sake of argument. Firms pay me a lot of money for that. It's not exactly a $500 fee that I'm collecting. So as a result, getting a referral from someone who's a mover and shaker in an organization that walks a resume over is it's viewed as gold by organizations because it's saving them gold.
It is, and I actually, my position that I had with Intel Corporation, I was actually working for a small software development company, and I got a call out of the blue from a hiring manager at Intel Corporation, and I didn't know how he got my contact information, but he said, "You don't know me, but I've read your articles in the Professional Society Journal. You speak at the conferences and over the years, and I feel like I know you, and I think you'd be a great fit for our team." And he gave me a job offer pitch right over the phone, which I accepted. And he actually flew into Austin from it was in Washington, D.C., and Washington State, and he flew into Austin, interviewed me over dinner, sealed the deal right there, all based on the professional brand that I had previously established by being actively involved in my profession.
And it's so much easier to establish a professional brand these days. My guess is this is not 2 years ago that this occurred for you, Don. This is going back in time.
Fall back.
As a result, you had to speak at a professional association to establish a brand. These days, there's so many ways to do it. Whether it's in groups on LinkedIn, things that you mention on Twitter that you share across platforms. You can host a blab where you bring in people and interview them. There's a lot of different ways that you're able to establish a brand. The LinkedIn blogging platform. They're articles for them.
Easier, but at the same time, they're opening the gates wide, so you have to be a lot more discerning about who you let into the castle, so to speak. And that gets to one of the points, Jeff, that you probably recognize, that in any hiring decision, it's still kind of a crapshoot in a way, because there's a thing called irreducible unpredictability when it comes to being able to bring a candidate in and to determine what their future success in that position would be based on the information you're provided through a cover letter, an interview, through references, because, some of that information might have been embellished and polished a little bit. So you don't really have 100% of the facts in order to predict whether that person is going to be successful. But a lot of times, even with the best assessments that are out there for candidate assessment used by hiring managers and HR, a lot of times that final decision is the gut decision by the hiring manager. Who's going to be the best fit for this team? Who's going to segue right in and hit the ground running and not be the squeaky wheel that's going to have to get the grease all the time?
And I go back to a statistic that most people tend to gloss over, and that is that 70% of hiring managers 70% of hiring managers look back on individual hires and regret them like 80% of the time within the first year that person's joined. So clearly this is a difficult process that has yet to be quantified and effectively created. And thus, your job, folks, is to do things that allow you to stand out in a positive way, in a way that allows, and we can do another show on the things that you need to get out of the interview. Matter of fact, I think I'll do that with someone. But folks, you need to create that positive impression, stand out from the pack, in a variety of ways that Donn and other of my guests have spoken about, so that you have that opportunity to get in the door. So we're starting to come up on the end of time with one another, Donn, and there's so much material that I know you can share. What haven't I asked you so far that we really need to cover?
Well, I think one of the things I can give your listeners is a tip for a cover letter. Make sure it's less than 1 page long. Make sure you have a name at the top, not Dear Hiring Manager, but a specific name. Make sure you sign it like a business letter sincerely, but it is a marketing promotion effort that promotes the future benefits of your expertise. And in that cover letter, you should have more instances of the words you, your, yours than I, me, my, or mine. It's a rule of thumb that I've found, and it also coincides with what they teach in Advertising Copywriting 101, is that you're always selling the benefits and not the features of a product, and you are the product. So the more times you use you, your, yours rather than I, me, my, mine, you can pretty much know that cover letter is slanted to the interest of the hiring manager, which is what it's supposed to be.
You betcha. Now, I'm going to pull in a quirky question, and that is, in advertising and marketing, most of the time, they're not selling the quality of the product. They're trying to sell an emotional response that the viewer is going to get or anticipate getting from purchasing the product. Oh, my bathroom will be wonderful, and my wife, husband, partner is going to be so pleased with me because I purchased this particular product. Or everyone's going to think I'm terrific because I bought this car. And that each of those are a particular feeling. Is there a feeling that someone should be going for in the course of the cover letter? Or is it just simply, man, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm going to make you look good. Is that feeling that someone should be delivering?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that in the cover letter, and I've done a lot of. There's also a language of impression management that you use in interviews, but you can also use in your cover letters, and I write about that in my books. And it's rather than saying I have experience in X, Y, and Z, you turn that around and say you will need an expert who has many years providing solutions in X, Y, and Z. You're acknowledging the fact that a hiring manager is going to need this skill. You're basically what you're doing is you're converting that feature of past experience into a future benefit of expertise. And that segues into the you, your, yours, I, me, mine conundrum.
Very smooth, Donn. And Donn, thank you so much for making time. I have the hunch that you and I could go on for another half hour easily, but I have to be respectful to the audience and to you and your time. How can people find out more about you and the kind of work that you do, your books, everything?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. My 2 books, the first one, Confessions of a Hiring Manager, Rev 2.0. The second edition is available on Amazon.com and Smashwords and Kindle. It's in all those ebook formats. And that book was the 2012 winner of the International Book Award for Jobs and Careers and the 2012 Global eBook Award for Employment. So it's a stellar book according to the critics, and it's based on nearly 30 years experience on this side of the hiring manager's desk. The other book that just came out in September is called Strategic Career Engagement, the definitive guide for getting hired and promoted, and basically digs deeper into the material some of the material that was in Confessions of a Hiring Manager. That book as well is available on Amazon.com, ebooks on Smashwords and Kindle. And people can follow my blog, but the easiest way to do that is just get on Twitter. It's at Donn LeVie, DONNLEVIE, and from there you can find my website, my blog, and follow my Twitter feeds.
Super. Donn, thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it. And folks, I'll be back next time with someone else to help you with your job search. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I want to remind you, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, send a connection request to me at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. And if you have questions about job hunting, you are not alone. Lord knows people always have questions, but make the mistake of asking the wrong people for advice. So if you visit my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us, and look for a tab on the top that says, have your job search questions answered. I'd be happy to answer your questions, help get you moving again, and help get you results. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, leave 5 stars and a great review in iTunes, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.